I was standing in my kitchen in Austin, Texas, my face still smudged with flour as I was preparing almond cookies for my husband Colin's company gathering. The stove was still hot, but I didn't notice. Everything around me went silent when I saw the notification pop up on the iPad. Next to the blender. Sienna marketing project? Tonight's gonna be wild. Thanks for the surprise dancer. The girls are all hyped. XO. I froze, still holding the paring knife, though I wasn't slicing anything anymore. Marketing project? I had never heard that name before. I tapped the thread. Her real name popped up, Sienna Brooks, 28, Colin's new assistant at the digital media agency downtown. I remembered her. Met her only once at last year's Christmas party when she laughed a little too loudly and touched Colin's arm like an old friend. I felt something off then but blamed myself. I didn't want to be that kind of wife, jealous, petty. After 12 years of marriage, I still believed Colin was a good man. I scrolled further through the messages. Remember the Crescent Resort? Still can't believe we almost got caught. Do you still have that photo of me in the white robe? I went numb. Every line, every heart emoji, every mention of secret partner ripped through my chest. In under a minute, I saw it all. Plans to hide things from me, hotels, dinner receipts, angled shots of hotel beds. Everything I used to call a marriage had become a hollow shell. My hands shaking, I opened the attachments tab. One photo showed Colin standing in front of a hotel room door with a bottle of champagne in hand. The next, him unbuttoning his shirt, wearing a smile I hadn't seen in years. The more I scrolled, the harder it became to breathe. There was a receipt from Aria Hotel in Denver. He had told me he was there for a strategy summit. And then there was this message. You should win Secret Boyfriend of the Year. After my bachelorette, let's sneak away for a few days. I let out a laugh, not from amusement. It sounded hollow, sharp, like glass breaking. So the urgent client meeting tonight was just a pathetic excuse to play dancer at the bachelorette party of a woman who was engaged to someone else. That woman was Sienna. And her poor fiancé had no idea. Alongside the flirty texts were entire conversations planning a new life post-wedding. I once thought storylines like this only happened in trashy reality shows. I didn't scream. I didn't smash things. I didn't call him in a rage. I sat down on the kitchen floor, back pressed against the fridge, and breathed. In my hands, the iPad glowed with undeniable proof. Colin was sleeping with another woman. And she was about to marry a man who had no clue he was the prop in someone else's private game. I glanced at the clock. It was 8:27 p.m. If Sienna hadn't changed her plans, her bachelorette party would be starting now, and Colin, my husband, the man I once thought was boringly faithful, was likely strip dancing in a tacky, tearaway suit in front of 20 women in glittery dresses. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand and stood up slowly. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to stay home baking while my husband undressed at his mistress's bachelorette. And I knew I wouldn't be going alone. I changed silently. A black hoodie, old jeans, hair thrown into a messy bun. No makeup, no perfume. Just me, raw, alert, and done with every lie. My phone still showed the thread from Sienna. And another one I had just found, sent to someone named Ben Carter. I opened the profile. A kind-looking man, warm eyes, standing with Sienna on a beach. The caption read, "Counting down to forever. 18 days to go." Her fiancé, 30 years old, an electrical engineer based in San Antonio. That was all I needed. I typed a few keywords on Instagram, then LinkedIn. Within 13 minutes, I found his company, public profile, and his work email. I wrote, "Hi Ben, my name is Ava. I'm sorry to message you like this, but I believe you have a right to know. I'm the wife of Colin Madsen, the man who's been secretly involved with your fiancée Sienna Brooks. I have photos, messages, hotel receipts, and even evidence from tonight. If you'd like to see them, I'm willing to share everything." 12 minutes later, a short reply. "Can you call me right now?" I did. Ben's voice was calm at first, but as I described the fake business trips, the hotel stays, the photos, his words caught in his throat. When I mentioned the Crescent Resort, he went completely silent. We We booked our wedding there, he said. That exact place. Ben, I hesitated. Her bachelorette party is tonight, at the Fairmont by the river. Colin, my husband, is the surprise performer. If you want to see it for yourself. Where are you? 15 minutes away, I can pick you up. I drove to the Marriott where Ben's family was staying ahead of the wedding. He was already waiting in the lobby. Gray shirt, pale face. Beside him stood a middle-aged woman in a navy velvet dress, and an older man with sharp eyes and silver hair. This is my mother, Lucille, and this is my father, Walter Carter. They want to come too, Ben said. No further explanation was needed. I nodded and unlocked the car door. No one spoke during the 18-minute drive to the Fairmont Hotel. The only sounds were the soft click of Lucille's rosary beads in her hands and the faint swiping as Ben scrolled through the screenshots I had sent him. I glanced at the rearview mirror. Walter stared straight ahead at the road, unblinking. As we neared the hotel, he finally spoke, his voice gravelly and low. Do you know what you want out of tonight? I looked up at the mirror and replied, I want the truth. Not drama, not revenge, just the truth. Clear enough that no one can twist it anymore. Lucille nodded, still clutching her rosary. Sometimes the truth alone is enough to destroy everything built on lies. I led them through the lobby and up to the second floor. The party was happening in a private room with a sign that read, Bachelorette Bash Bride-to-be Sienna Brooks. The bright gold letters screamed against a hot pink backdrop. I stopped in front of the door, took a deep breath, then turned to Ben. You ready? He nodded. Let's go. I pushed the door open. It flew wide. The music cut off at the worst possible moment. Mid-bass drop suffocated instantly by the thick tension that rushed in behind us. More than 20 women in sparkly dresses whipped their heads around. And in the center of the room, under flickering purple lights, stood my husband. Colin, shirtless, one side of his rip-off pants already torn down, a crooked black bow tie hanging from his neck. His face froze like it had been struck by lightning. And right in the spotlight, Sienna, the bride-to-be who would walk down the aisle in 18 days, lifted a champagne glass high in the air. Her face drained of color the second she locked eyes with Ben. No one spoke for the first 5 seconds. Then Lucille cut through the silence with a voice sharp as a knife. What are you doing, Sienna? The champagne glass slipped from Sienna's hand. The glass shattered on the floor, a clean, final sound, like the ending of a story no one wanted to hear. Ben, Sienna gasped, eyes wild. It's not what it looks like. Ben didn't move toward her. He simply held up his phone, screen lit so the entire room could see the messages, the photos I had sent him. Whispers rippled through the group. A few women backed away, clutching their purses, lowering their heads to look at their phones. A bridesmaid in a sea-green dress stammered. What is going on? I stepped forward. I didn't look at Colin. I faced Sienna, my voice steady, not loud but cutting through every sound. You've been sleeping with my husband for 8 months. You've been lying to your fiancé, and tonight, while claiming this was your bachelorette party, you hired my husband to be the surprise dancer. How long were you planning to keep this act going? Colin took a step back, his mouth opening slightly to speak, but I turned away before he could form words. I have everything. Hotel receipts, selfies of you two at the Aria, messages where you called Colin your secret partner. Even that time you complained about how exhausting wedding planning was and how you wished the two of you could just disappear to Chicago. Ring a bell? Sienna shook her head, speechless. She tried to move toward Ben, but he stepped back. I booked our flights, paid for our honeymoon suite, ordered flowers, hired the band. I even picked out your dad's tuxedo, Ben said, his voice breaking. And you're here, with someone else's husband. A woman in the corner started crying. Lucille placed her hand over her chest while Walter's jaw tightened, arms crossed. I turned to Colin, still standing there like a statue. Do you have anything to say? I asked. I didn't know it would get this far, Colin stammered, eyes blinking rapidly. Sienna said it was just for fun. A light-hearted party. I let out a dry laugh. Light-hearted? A luxury hotel. Purple strobe lights. And the exact same outfit I found the receipt for 3 months ago? The one you claimed was a business expense? Outside I heard footsteps, likely a security guard responding to the noise, but no one left the room. I pulled out my phone and opened the message Colin had sent Sienna just 2 days earlier. After the wedding things will be easier. She doesn't suspect anything. We'll figure it out, like we planned. I held the screen up to Sienna, then turned to Colin. You were right. I didn't suspect anything, but now? That's over. Ben raised his head, his eyes wet but unwavering. He stepped forward, removed the engagement ring from his left hand and placed it on the buffet table. You didn't just lie to me, Sienna, you used me. You let my parents fund a wedding you had no intention of honoring, and worst of all, you actually thought I'd never find out. One of Sienna's friends, likely the maid of honor, stared at her in disgust. You let me spend a month planning this fake party? Sienna cried. She couldn't say a word. I turned to Colin one last time. You can say whatever you want, but I'm done listening. I walked out of the room without looking back. Hadn't even reached the hallway before I heard Colin's voice behind me, trembling, desperate. Eva, wait. We need to talk. Not in front of everyone. Please. I turned around and looked directly at the man I had trusted for the past 12 years. Do you remember March 16th last year? I asked, my voice not loud, but clear enough to quiet the room. Colin squinted, trying to recall. Your mom's birthday? I nodded. Yes. But it was also the day my brother flew in from New York. His first time back in 4 years. The whole family waited for you all evening and you texted that your flight was delayed in Houston. I paused, my gaze locked on Colin. Do you know why I didn't ask more questions? Because I believed you. I defended you when my mom said you could have switched flights. I pulled out my phone and opened the hotel receipt from that night. Hilton, Hoston, Post Oak. Room 1732, 2 guests. Booked under C. Madsen and S. Brooks. I kept this receipt for nearly a year, not knowing what it really meant. Colin froze, his hands clenched at his sides. Sienna turned ghostly pale. I thought you were on a business trip, and you... I turned to Sienna. You posted a story from a luxury car with no location. You thought I wouldn't notice, but hotel lobby cameras don't blur faces. And timestamps don't lie. I paused again, softer this time, but sharp as a blade. Colin, I know this wasn't the first time. The air turned heavy. Do you remember Valerie? I asked. She was the first person I called after reading every message between you and Sienna. Colin's eyes widened. I know you dated briefly before you met me. You told me it didn't work out because she was too busy, not ready to commit. I stared at him. But Valerie told me something else. That you said you loved her. That you were planning to propose. Then you disappeared, just weeks after meeting me at that corporate seminar. Sienna glanced at Colin, who stepped back. You once told me I was the first person who made you want a family, I said, my face unreadable. Turns out I was just the next version of a recycled script. Ben inhaled sharply. His eyes weren't pained anymore. They were cold. And you? He said to Sienna, voice steady but laced with fire. Did you think I wouldn't notice my parents paid 80% of our wedding costs? You said you wanted the lakefront resort because it had family meaning, but really you wanted the Carter name on the invitation, to elevate your own. He shook his head. You used me. Used my family. Built a fake fairy tale to cover your plan to run off with someone else's husband. Mr. Walter, silent until now, finally spoke. Sienna, you didn't just shame yourself, you shamed your parents. Our relatives flying in from Michigan next week, they believed they were attending a celebration. Sienna shook her head, tears pouring down. No, that's not... I was confused. I thought... You thought you were clever enough to fool everyone, Lucille cut in, her voice no longer trembling. But God does not sleep. I stood still, breathing deeply. Everything was unfolding as if I had rehearsed it for months, though in truth I had pieced it all together in just a few hours. Colin, I said, when you said I was controlling, that I made you feel suffocated, did you ever consider why? That I was anxious because something invisible was eroding our trust? I used to think it was my fault, but now I know. I was the only one who didn't realize I was being lied to. The room went silent again. It no longer felt like a party, it was a courtroom. And today, no one could escape. I didn't need to shout, I didn't need to create a scene. I simply placed a navy folder on the banquet table, next to Sienna's shattered glass and the abandoned engagement ring. "This is the last thing I brought," I said, my eyes still on Colin. He squinted, confused. "Our retirement investment account," I began. "We agreed not to touch it until we were both 50, but for the past year the balance has steadily dropped. Despite no major market shifts." I pulled out 3 statements. January, 5,000 withdrawn, labeled marketing advance. March, 8,000, internal travel. May, 12,000. By August, a straight 30,000 withdrawal, no description. Colin swallowed hard. I continued. "I hired a private auditor. They tracked every suspicious withdrawal over the last 6 months, and they found something interesting. A company named Madsen Creatives LLC. Registered under your name in Delaware." Sienna flinched, her lips pressed tight. "The company has no real office, no staff, no business activity, but it received over $142,000 from our retirement account." I stared at Colin. "You moved money into your own name, then used that company card for hotel bills, gifts, getaways, with her." "I didn't," Colin tried to interject. I held up the next page. The deposit invoice for a luxury condo at San Antonio Riverwalk, valued at $570,000. "Do you know whose names are listed as co-owners?" I asked. "Colin Madsen and Sienna Brooks. They used your personal email as the contact and her phone number." I turned to Sienna, who no longer had tears in her eyes, only a silent, embarrassed look. "Were you planning to move in after the wedding? Or wait until I was officially gone from his life?" Colin stammered. I was gonna surprise her with it, but I didn't use any money from our account." I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't? You think I don't know you mortgaged our house to shift the funds? The only property still under both our names is now stripped of its equity. And the stated reason? Personal brand development. A brand I was never told about, and that has nothing to do with me." Ben looked at Colin with disgust. "You were going to use your wife's money to fund your runaway plan with someone else's fiancé? That's worse than a bad novel." Mr. Walter, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. "I used to be a senior auditor in the oil and gas industry. And I'll be honest, your financial cover-up was amateur. If Ava hadn't caught this, the IRS would have sooner or later." Mrs. Lucille placed a gentle but firm hand on my shoulder. "You did well, very well. You didn't collapse in silence like so many other women." I nodded, thanked her, and turned to Colin one last time. "Last week," I said, "I worked with an attorney. We moved half of the joint legal assets into a temporary trust under protected personal rights, not even counting the funds you misused." Colin opened his mouth to object, but I raised my hand to stop him. "And before you ask, yes, I had every right. Because the only remaining asset under both our names had your name removed once you used that phantom company as the mortgage basis. I didn't break the contract, you did." I flipped to the final page in the folder. "This is the formal request to freeze all joint accounts until the civil investigation is complete. And this is the preliminary divorce petition, unsent but fully prepared." I placed both documents on the table. "You can read them thoroughly. I don't need another apology. I need clarity." Colin gasped, like someone had just punched him in the chest. Sienna sat motionless, no tears, no reaction. And I, for the first time in over a year, felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. No more backing down, no more waiting for someone else to clean up what they broke. The banquet room door burst open again, but this time it wasn't me. It wasn't Ben. It wasn't anyone involved. A tall, lean man in a black suit stepped in, leather briefcase in hand. His eyes scanned the crowd, then landed on Colin, who had just tried to sit down as if his legs could no longer support him. "Am I on time?" the man asked, his voice low, clear, and sharp like steel. Colin shot up. "Derek, what's going on?" The man nodded. "Yes, it's me. Derek Hall, co-founder and chief legal officer of the company you quietly turned into your personal playground." I held my breath. Of all the scenarios I had rehearsed in my head, I never once imagined Derek Hall showing up. Colin's longtime business partner, and a man so blunt he used to intimidate even me during board meetings. Derek glanced at me and gave a small nod. Ava, thank you for calling. Without the evidence you sent, the executive team and I would still be in the dark. Colin's mouth opened. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious, Derek snapped. You used the company's credit card for personal expenses, hotels, flights, gifts, even a non-existent internal training program, totaling nearly $92,000 in less than 8 months. Sienna slumped into her chair. Derek continued, unflinching. You thought being a co-founder meant immunity? You signed the code of conduct, Colin. You helped write the ethics charter with me. And then you broke every part of it. Colin was drenched in sweat, his voice shaky. I was just advancing some expenses. I was going to repay. Derek didn't blink. Did you know the 5-night hotel congratulatory email from the Lafayette went to your work inbox? The new security system logged all internal network access. That's how we found the dual email accounts you created to fake travel records. I turned to Sienna. She was shaking now, gripping the chair arm to stay upright. And the worst part, Derek went on, is you brought a junior employee along on those trips. He locked eyes with Sienna. Ms. Brooks, do you remember the company's mandatory policy on zero tolerance for superior-subordinate relationships? Sienna jumped up, her eyes wet. I didn't realize the policy was that strict. I thought... You didn't know? Derek cut in. Let me remind you, every employee undergoes ethics training and signs an acknowledgement form. I have yours on file. No one said a word. Derek opened his briefcase and pulled out 2 cream-colored envelopes. He placed them on the table. One is Colin Madsen's termination letter for gross misconduct, effective immediately. The other is a notice of suspension for Miss Sienna Brooks, pending formal review. Both are barred from accessing company assets, systems, email, and client lists as of today. Colin staggered. You can't do this. I helped build that company. Which makes your actions even more disgraceful? Derek replied, eyes cold as steel. If we don't hold someone like you accountable, then everything we stand for is meaningless. I clenched my hands, not out of stress, but because it was the first time I'd seen Colin's real face, unmasked before the very people who once believed in him. Derek looked at me one last time. Ms. Ava, thank you for your courage. If you ever need internal financial reports for divorce or future litigation, I'm happy to provide them. I nodded. I really appreciate that. Derek turned away, leaving behind a silence so heavy it seemed to sweep away every last remaining mask. In the ballroom that once pulsed with celebration, all that lingered now were blank stares and stifled breaths. I sat down, steadier than I'd felt in years. No one spoke after Derek left. There was nothing left to cover up, no one left to blame. The faint scent of champagne still clung to the air, but any taste of festivity was long gone. The music had stopped hours ago. What remained was a party. Undone. Ben stepped forward toward Sienna. He didn't yell or lash out, but in his eyes was a hollow chasm, like every ounce of trust had just gone up in flames. I met you back in 2020, Ben began, voice low and a little hoarse. You were still working at a cafe after finishing grad school. You said you were tired of being seen as decoration, that I was the first man who ever made you feel safe. He paused, let out a bitter laugh. The irony. Because for the past 3 years, I poured my savings, my heart, into building a life for us. And you? Spent your time plotting an escape route with someone else's husband. Sienna burst into tears. Ben, I never planned for this to happen. At first it felt like a mistake, but it spiraled out of control. But then you saw what he had, the house, the money, the reputation, and you thought, why not? You could lock in a stable life through my family, then vanish once you were ready. Lucille wiped her eyes and stood beside her son. We loved you like our own, called your parents friends. We spent 6 months preparing this wedding. Do you think people our age can survive a betrayal like this? Sienna trembled, clutching the edge of her dress like a scolded child. But no one moved to comfort her. No one believed her anymore. Pastor Chapman was waiting in the car, Walter said, his voice icy with disappointment. Based on what happened tonight, the church can't proceed with the wedding. The ceremony is cancelled. Sienna collapsed onto a chair, burying her face in her hands, her whole body folding in on itself. Ben removed the silver ring from his left hand. He turned it slowly, then placed it gently on the table. The soft clink echoed through the silent room. I deserve better. One of Sienna's bridesmaids stepped forward hesitantly. I'm sorry, but I can't stay. The rest of the group already booked early flights. She turned away, eyes low. One by one, Sienna's friends stood up. They gathered their handbags, high heels, and unopened wedding gifts. None said goodbye. They left quietly, as if afraid to brush up against the stains spreading from the center of the room. Sienna suddenly cried out, voice cracking. I didn't think it would explode like this. I was just trying to find something better, something safe. I walked slowly toward Ben, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. You're not alone. Ben nodded slightly. His gaze was no longer on Sienna. It was fixed on the door. On freedom. Walter squeezed his wife's hand. We'll handle the vendors. Better to lose a deposit than to throw a wedding built on lies. Sienna looked up, eyes bloodshot, mascara smeared like a watercolor ruined by rain. Dad, Mom, please, don't abandon me. Lucille didn't scold her. Her face held only quiet sorrow. We're not abandoning you, but you'll have to live with the choices you made. Only a few people remained. Me, Ben, the Carters, and Colin, still leaning against the wall, eyes vacant, spirit elsewhere. I looked at Sienna one last time. A better life never starts by destroying someone else's. 6 months after that fateful night, I sat on the back porch of a little wooden house outside Flagstaff, Arizona. I was holding a cup of peppermint tea that had long gone cold, watching a flock of sparrows descend onto the yard. I sold the old house in Austin a week after the court accepted the divorce filing. Colin didn't put up much of a fight. The evidence: financial misconduct, workplace violations, and public backlash was overwhelming. His attorney tried negotiating, but after 2 meetings they realized I wasn't there to haggle. I wasn't chasing a win, I just wanted my life back. The new house was small but peaceful. No pricey security systems, no smart lights, no voice-controlled panels, just the sound of wind weaving through pines and the scent of fresh timber on my sleeves when I opened the door. I now worked part-time for a nonprofit that helps women rebuild after divorce and emotional abuse. It's not glamorous, no suits, no KPIs, but every support group, every quiet story shared by someone learning to stand again, made me feel like I was exactly where I needed to be. Ben and I still kept in touch. We weren't dating, at least not yet. But now and then he'd drive up from Tucson, bring black coffee and a couple of books he thought I'd like. We talked about everything, except the past. Not because we were avoiding it, because we no longer needed to. Ben adopted a dog from the rescue center, a black Labrador named Murphy, who sneezes every time he smells mint. I planted a few rows of tomatoes behind the kitchen, though most of them didn't survive their first frosty night. Still, I wasn't upset about it. Sometimes, when the wind howls against the glass panels, I dream of that night. Not the confrontation or the tears, but the final look I gave Colin. Cold, free of pain, free of love, and free of resentment. Just a woman who had finally seen the truth behind a dusty layer of lies. I used to think freedom meant being unburdened, carefree. Now I understand. Freedom is when no one can twist your image to fit their narrative. I had once been the controlling wife, the woman who wasn't attractive anymore, the reason men run, but all of that was a cover story, someone else's excuse for their guilt. Now I'm a 37-year-old woman, divorced, no children, living alone. Each morning, I brew coffee by hand instead of using a machine. Every evening, I write a few lines in my journal. Not to retell the past, but to make space for the future. I no longer live to be seen. I live to feel. A message appeared on my phone. Beating back up to Flagstaff this Saturday. Still owe me that apple pie. Ben. I smiled softly and typed back. Only if you remember the vanilla ice cream. I set the phone down, stood up, and pulled my wool cardigan closer around my shoulders. The weather was turning colder, but inside I no longer felt the chill of the past season. I had walked through the storm. And on the other side, I found myself. Ava's story is a powerful reminder that no one should sacrifice their dignity to hold on to a relationship built on lies. In real life, many people stay silent out of fear of change. But the truth, even when painful, is the first step toward liberation. Betrayal doesn't destroy a person, silence in the face of it does. Choosing to confront it, protect your dignity, and start over isn't weakness. It's the clearest proof of self-respect and rebirth. What do you think about Ava's decision? Would you have done the same in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional and unexpected real-life stories.